Okay, welcome to the 96th episode of an Evolving Man podcast. Today, I'm excited to be speaking to Keith Day. Keith is a dedicated thought leader with 2 decades of personal experience battling peripheral neuropathy. He is the founder of Neuropathy Truth and has spent 10 years as a speaker, educating and consulting with medical providers and patients alike. He is an expert in trauma and how we recover. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
So, how I love to begin the podcast is just for you to share a little bit of your journey. How did you get into the work you now do, Keith?
Well, I originally started my professional career in business management, business training, building sales teams, and that evolved into developing an innate skill I had, which was to take an existing marketing company or marketing campaign or sales organization that was struggling, not meeting its numbers, and evaluate it, tear it down, build it back up, make it more efficient, more effective, more profitable. And I was very successful at that. And about midway through about the 5th or 6th year of doing that, I was about 45 years old, and I began to wake up in the mornings feeling really sore, like I had just been in a boxing match with Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson, or I just been the tackle dummy in American football. And I remember sometimes thinking when I had to get up for the first time out of bed, thinking, man, this is going to hurt.
Mhm.
And it did. And I developed this attitude that was incorrect, which was my body was sore because it was breaking down from all the high level sports I played in my youth years. And as I continued into my early adult years, all of the weightlifting and interval training and road running that I was doing, and all of that was wrong. It was totally incorrect. What was happening is I I was an undiagnosed diabetic. Now, I know that sounds crazy to a lot of people listening to us, but there are literally 1 to 2 million people on this earth at any given time who are undiagnosed diabetics. It's not just as simple as taking a blood test. At the same time that I was battling this unknown disease of diabetes, my body was beginning to develop, like simmer and boil, something on the stove called neuropathy. And about the time I was diagnosed with diabetes, this awful, awful disease called chronic small fiber polyperipheral neuropathy literally exploded inside my body. And the two of those, the combination of that two was devastating. It caused me to reel, literally backpedal as fast as I could, trying to catch up in some way, shape, or form, or to deal with this dual battle of these two diseases simultaneously. It was not just devastating to me physically uh, by taking away my quality functions such as walking, jumping, running, playing tennis, playing golf, walking the dog, dancing with my wife. I lost all that ability, but also the unspoken evil of those two diseases combined is depression.
Mhm.
The depression comes because someone suffering like myself, our whole quality of life changes, and in my case, rapidly, like within a couple months. And then that person becomes sedentary, and then they pull away from their social activities and become introverted and start to isolate themselves. And then the depression is brutal. And then the last stage of that is you begin to face the fact that you're losing your independence. And I don't know about you, sir, but I don't know anybody, not one soul, who's going to have a big party the day they lose their independence.
Mhm.
I just don't know anyone that's going to do that. And so all this coupled just devastated my entire life between 40 and 48 years old. Finally, by grace of God or in some manner, I became sick and tired of being sick.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I was determined to find the fight and competitiveness I had in my youth as a basketball player or a tennis player or a golfer or whatever it may be. And I decided to literally pick myself up by my bootstraps and take an action. That was very difficult, mentally especially, because the first action I had to take was mentally. I had to begin to rebuild my faith. I had to again rebuild my trust that the light I saw at the end of the tunnel was not a freight train. I had to tell myself I could do this. I had to bring back something from my youth, which was self-talk. That as a young adult, I just thought I was the best at everything I did. I didn't need to tell myself I was good. I just knew I was good. But with this disease, I had to tell myself multiple times a day, I can do this. You can get through the pain. You can take that step. You can walk down the aisle of the grocery store, hold on to this, hold on to that. It was that battle itself was extremely difficult because I had fallen so far. And then there's other actions I had to take. So that's how it evolved. And then one led to another, where I found the difference between sick care and healthcare. And what I mean is the American medical standard of care in the United States has eroded and decayed to a path of least resistance and to a pill, a one-word definition of pill. And the pills that they give us here in the States do not treat the cause of a disease, they treat the symptoms. And the pills that treat a symptom, they have a side effect. So you have to take a pill to treat the side effect of the pill you're taking to treat the pill for the symptom. Pretty soon you got to take another pill to treat the side effect of the pill you're taking. And you get in this vicious circle called sick care. And I don't know about you, but I don't know anybody who's taking 3, 4, 5 pharmaceutical pills every day that is healthy. I don't know anybody. Now, in the last several years of my life, I've interviewed hundreds of thousands of patients. I don't know anybody who's healthy taking 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pharmaceutical pills a day. They're incredibly unhealthy. I found a group of doctors by luck, by intervention of God, that treated the cause naturally. And when they started applying those treatments to me, I became so much better. I started to tell other patients in their office about how well I was doing. That led to them asking me to go give talks outside the clinic to patients that might have interest. Well, that led me to converting 50 dinner guests who were sick with neuropathy or potentially neuropathy to 40 patients, which is an enormous conversion. They had doctors doing these talks that were converting 10 patients out of 50. The owner, a doctor, came to me and said, Keith, how is it that you're able to do this at 3, 4, 5 times better production than a doctor? You're not a doctor. I was shocked that he asked me that because I thought it was obvious, but I guess it wasn't. And I said, Doctor, the secret is I'm not a doctor. I'm a patient. I'm telling my story, and these other patients, they're crying. They're hugging me. They're telling me they didn't know someone else felt that way. They thought they were the only one with this disease. They didn't think anyone would understand why they can't sleep at night or what sheet feet is or sharp shooting pains or how your feet could freeze and burn simultaneously or all that other stuff. And so my credibility was through the roof because they knew I knew. And so that led to me developing a crusade. It's not a job. It's my life. A crusade of wanting to preach and teach to everyone who will listen to me my story of diabetes and diabetically induced neuropathy, but all neuropathies, what I've learned over these years, how to take care of it, how to treat the cause, what you can do at home, what you must do in a medical clinic, the difference between sick care and health care, all these things. And then I developed an educational program because I believe the most educational and knowledgeable patient will make the best decisions about their health care.
Mhm.
And then I do something naturally that doctors don't do. They've been terrible at it for years and they're getting worse at it. I listen to the patient. Imagine that. I just listen.
Mhm.
They tell me how they're doing, and I say, tell me more about that. I say, how does that affect your life? How does that affect your relationship with your spouse, your companion, your children, your siblings? How does it affect your work? I let them tell me their story.
Mhm.
Where in America, the doctor's got a clock and it's ticking 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Corporate medicine wants that doctor in and out. And then you don't see that doctor again. You see their assistants, their physician assistant or their nurse practitioner. And so I I found a niche that I kind of fell into because I became so sick, but I kind of created because I decided I was sick and tired of being sick, and I fought like heck, and I still fight every day. I'm in remission. There is no cure. I do occasionally have symptoms again, but now I know what to do. And so that's what I mean, sir, when I say it's a crusade. It's not a job. This is my life. I'll never stop doing it until there are no more tomorrows.
Thank you. Thank you, Keith. Your story is very inspiring. It really is, touches me. And interesting, it reminds me a bit of my story, my crusade on one level, having been through childhood trauma. And for me, it was boarding school. And for me, it wasn't physical pain, it was mental and emotional. I tried to take my own life in my 20s. And since then, last 10 years have just been on this, realizing how many thousands, hundreds of thousands have had similar experiences to myself. And a lot of them are in positions of power, you know. So I really honor you for doing this work. See a man on purpose, on mission.
Well, thank you so much. It's
Mm,
humbling and I appreciate it.
thank you. You mentioned a bit about personal story and you listen to your clients, and I really see that we have the same thing in the UK. I think it's 7 minutes maximum that a doctor is allowed to spend with a patient. It might have changed now. It might be less or more, but it's something along those lines. And you can't hear someone's story.
No. How do you provide quality to a patient? And you've interviewed many hundreds, thousands of people probably.
Mm.
How do you get to the depth of their pain and their suffering, whether it's emotional or physical, in 7 minutes? You cannot.
No, no. It's like we've taken the humanity out of
Mm,
something which actually we need to be listened to hear.
yeah,
With bringing into this country this idea of trauma informed. So, you know, we don't have a trauma informed media. We don't have a trauma informed healthcare. My last podcast with a lady who's written a book about trauma informed healthcare. And she's just saying, you know, to listen to people, be kind. What are the messages you're putting on the walls of your health clinics? So yeah, I can resonate with that. And you mentioned as well, beginning of the importance of mental, you know, your mental response to this. Because a lot of the clients or the people I work with have physical ailments. That's a side effect of the trauma. We'll come into trauma in a minute. But how important was that, you know, your mental side? And how did you cultivate that, Keith?
well, in the manner that I grew up, everything was always physical in our home as a youth, always physical in my teenage years, always who had the bigger biceps, the bigger chest, the faster runner, who could jump the highest. And I spent all these years developing all these physical muscles. I'm 6'5", and at
Wow.
one time on the height of my athleticism, I was 6'5", 227 pounds, and just chiseled, looked like Adonis or Hercules. When I became sick, all that physical ability, it was worth nothing. I quickly learned that the most important muscle in my body was my mind. And the important part of my mind and the most strong muscle in my mind was the mental part of it. Mental strength, I have learned, is the strongest muscle in all of Earth. It is the mental capacity, your mental strength, your mental wherewithal that can lift you up over tragedies of unspoken tragedies to, or it can sink you to the lowest of all, perhaps even motivating tragedies. I'm someone that lost 3 siblings, 2 of them younger than me, my younger sister and my younger brother. My younger brother at the age of 17 took his own life. I was 23 at that time. I could not figure out how it was that this amazing young man who wrote poetry at 17 that was published in a Seattle literary art magazine, which is quite prestigious, someone who was a very good football player, an outstanding baseball player in high school, could have such feelings of worthlessness and such low self-esteem that he could jump off a bridge 400 feet high above the Aurora Ship Canal, close to the Jimi Hendrix Memorial Statue in Fremont District of Seattle, and kill himself. So when I finally began to understand the real power a person possesses mentally, that power is either going to be something used for good, something used to maintain status quo, or something used in a tragedy. You have to choose. I had to choose to move forward. I lost one of my twin children. My son was taking a nap and didn't wake up. We got his heart to beat, rushed him to the hospital, put him on life support systems. I begged, I cried, I pleaded for a miracle for 3 days. Finally, this older gentleman, a pediatric neurologist, and my son's pediatrician had a private meeting with my companion and myself. And this older pediatric neurologist, before he could talk, his chin started to quiver. And I looked at him and I could see tears coming down his face. And he said, "Mr. Day, I was a 23-year-old father. Mr. Day, I've only had to say what I'm going to say today to one other person in my entire career. And that person was my wife, about our own child." And he said, "Sir, your son Casey has no brain activity and is legally brain dead. Your choices are to leave him on life support system, for which I believe he'll never recover and never have any improvement. But once you leave him on for so long, you will not have the ability to make the decision to turn him off. It will then go to the hands of administrators. Or, sir, you can make the decision as a loving father to take your son off those supports and let God's will be done." There's never been the words that I have had the ability to find to describe the utmost pain and the utmost horror of the words that pediatric neurologist spoke to me that day. After a lot of discussion with my significant other, we made the decision to turn Casey's life support systems off. And family gathered around the room and his bed, and the nurse humbly and as efficiently as she could disconnected him from life supports. I took him in my arms and I held my son Casey till his last breath. I held him a little while longer when they continued to want to take him from me, even though he was passed, because I was wanting to burn the image of his angelic face onto my heart and into my soul. When they took my son from me, it was a feeling as if they literally ripped a fabric of my soul away from me. I still had a surviving twin son who needed to be loved, who had just lost his companion of 9 months in the womb and several months in the crib. A son who for a year was depressed and lonely, having lost his twin sibling. My surviving twin is now 41 years old, soon to be 41. As I described to you that moment of when I had to be the strongest of my life mentally, it is like it's yesterday. So I have had a life that has been full of trauma from my mother's failed relationships, being married 8 times before I graduated high school, to the loss of my younger sister, Connie, loss of my younger brother, James, the loss of an older brother in his 60s, the loss of my son, and the loss of a granddaughter. Even though I had overcome all of that and had success in business, mild, medium success in my personal life, it wasn't until I became sick with this disease and I had fallen into the depths of depression. My entire aura about me changed, my personality changed, my physical nature changed. I realized that being sedentary kills. That becoming sedentary was me surrendering to this disease and waving the white flag of surrender. So I knew if I could, and I kept saying to myself, if I could overcome Casey's death, if I could overcome my brother's suicide, if I could overcome all the other issues that came before that in my life, I could find the strength to fight this disease. Don't get me wrong, sir. I still have struggles mentally. I still have to do these affirmations about that I can do it. I'm still my own cheerleader in my mind. I still talk to myself consistently about trying to accomplish things like playing golf again, that I used to be an avid golfer. So this is a lifelong struggle, but it's one that I am capable of doing because I want, first and foremost, I want to do it. Second of all, I believe, and I coupled faith and hope together as a working team, believing that faith without works is dead, and without hope, I really had nothing. And that's the basis and the foundation, coupled with prayer, that that has put me in the position I'm in today. I have a lot of work to do,
Mm, mm, mm.
but I've come a long ways.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very powerful story again. I'm really sorry to hear about your brother and your son's death. And yeah, it touches me. So thank you for your courage in sharing. I see that more and more, this importance of being vulnerable and having
Mhm.
that courage to say, you know what, I hurt, or I've hurt, in my life. And when we do that, it's like we give permission to others to go, yeah, me too, me too.
That's extremely well said. What you just said is so important, and thank you. Uh, uh, Giving permission to others.
Mm,
Yeah, that's so key and beautifully said.
thank you. Yeah, it's like this idea of, you know, we have to step into a place of leadership. And one of the ways I feel we're moving to is to be vulnerable, is leaders, true leaders are like wearing their heart on their sleeves, admitting. I was listening to RFK Jr. speak about his problems with addictions and spending time in prison. It's like
Mhm.
someone actually being honest rather than hiding and saying, I'm fine, when clearly then we're not, or they're not. So thank you. So what I'm hearing is what's helped you develop your mental toughness was and your mental strength was this idea of faith, hope, the affirmations, you can do this. It's like just having that certainty or that, you know, wanting to do it.
Correct. You
Mm,
got to want to. You got to have some desire. It
yeah,
doesn't have to be the as big as Kilimanjaro.
no,
You just have to have some desire. It's like I still part of a Bruce Springsteen lyric. You can't start a fire without a spark.
yeah.
Well, you got to have a little bit of desire. You got to want to.
Mm,
The trouble that I see is getting your mental strength into a position of sustainability because we live in a dark world.
mm,
By dark, I mean this: everything's negative. The media of the world champions negative stories. The media of the world criticizes heroes, if there are such a thing as a hero. The, the, the good stories don't sell prescriptions or subscriptions or memberships or audience. So, we're left as a society to have to filter all of this. And so many of my associates, so many of my patients, and I call them my patients, even though I'm not a doctor, I'm just a patient myself that's an educator. But so many of my clients, I guess would be a better word, but so many of them, they live inside the neighborhood located between both of their ears. I'm guilty of doing that. I'm not too sure who isn't guilty of doing that, but it's an awful place to live. You 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 need to try and paint these pictures in your mind of a better tomorrow or better next hour, a better afternoon in the morning, baby steps, whatever it needs to be. Uh, and then you cannot forget when you succeed on having a better afternoon than your morning was, compliment yourself.
mm,
Pat yourself on the back a little bit. You
yeah.
don't you don't have to finish the marathon to be successful. You don't have to win the marathon to be successful. I mean, I find myself a lot of times going back to the old childhood tale of the turtle versus the hare,
Mm, mm,
the
mm,
race. Well, who won? The turtle.
yeah.
But the hare was much faster.
It was.
Or I dare say in today's world, the hare was sexier. But the hare was a burnout. The hare had no sustainability.
Mm,
The turtle was wise. and sustained his positive energy and focus. And when he got to the finish line, it was full of light and success.
So consistency, because I see this in my work, a lot of the things I teach my clients and kind of explore the boarding school side of things, but also look at a daily practice of stretching or exercise or meditation or
Yes.
affirmation or
Mhm.
diet or sleep.
Mhm.
I mean, what have you used to help create this consistency, this routine to help?
Well, I think you touched on some of it already, but once I started to convince myself I needed to move,
Mhm.
I would go to Walmart and I would walk inside the Walmart because there was even surface. But I was afraid of falling because I had been falling. I didn't want to hit my head on that concrete floor. So I would grab a shopping cart. I would hold onto the shopping cart and I would walk up and down every aisle. I didn't buy a thing. Pretty soon, store associates got to know who I was and what I was doing. I was so impressed with one store manager came up and said, "Sir, I see you here every day. You never buy anything." That's fine with me. Just curious. What's your purpose? I shared a little bit with him. He patted me on the back and he said, "If you ever need a bottle of water, if you ever need anything, you let us know
Mm.
and you keep walking."
Beautiful.
Sometimes it would hurt so bad I would have tears coming down my face because neuropathy is very painful. Sometimes I couldn't feel the steps I was taking. I would hold tighter to the cart. Walking is so important. And when you struggle to walk like that, like when you struggle to play sports, your body is going to develop endorphins. And those endorphins will provide you good feeling, happiness, all of that. So you start with the mental and you get yourself going, I can do this, I can do it. Then you start with something physical that's safe, that you know you can do. And then as you do this and you build up, endorphins start to be created, a chemical reaction, and it starts to be all uplifting. It all comes together like this. Now, obviously, I'm simplifying everything, you know, but a lot of it also had to do with diet.
Mm.
I hate the word diet because people always take it to mean lesser.
Mm.
So, nutrition.
Nutrition.
I researched nutrition. I knew I had chronic low level inflammation. I knew that my body was so full of chronic low level inflammation, the bad inflammation, that if my body was a house, I was burning down from the inside out. I knew I had to increase my blood flow. I believe that blood flow was the river of life. I believe that today. If you don't have blood flow, where are you? You're dead, 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 dead. So I knew I had to get blood flow to the sensory nerve fibers of my feet, hands, arms, and legs to get sensory nerve fiber function control back. I knew I could do part of that with nutrition. So I started eating beets. I started eating more watermelon. I started drinking beet juice. I started eating non inflammatory foods. Those helped to a large degree. Was it everything I needed to do? Oh, heck no. No, no, no. You've got to do multiple things simultaneously to make this work. But a piece here, a piece there, a little here, a lot there, and it becomes a big, beautiful baked bread or a big, beautiful baked cake that provides a tremendous aggregated result. And so, uh, just a multitude of things, but walking and moving, and that really helped me mentally because it was something physical that my brain was actually feeling and computing and being involved in. And then I started to work on balance. So, I got so sick. I remember one time I was in the shower shampooing my hair, and all of a sudden I started to feel off, and I felt like I had to open my eyes and grab the side of the shower wall. So I didn't biff it because neuropathy steals your balance.
Mhm.
And the last thing you want to do is fall. It only takes one fall, hit your head. And then I was fortunate enough to have medical people around me, pharmacists and others, who they refused to allow me to take the standard pharmaceutical medicine that they give to neuropathy sufferers. Epilepsy medicine, non-convulsant seizure medicine called gabapentin, Neurontin Lyrica, which side effects are just horrendous. Brain fog, loss of balance, loss of short-term memory. Who would want to take something like that? Tricks the body, stops the brain from communicating to the sensory nerve fibers, but it doesn't stop the disease from progressing. So it's just a trick. I wrote a blog one time called Neuropathy Fixes, Trick or Treat. The trick is pharmaceuticals. The treat is treating the cause with proper therapies. So.
Thank you. Thank you. I've heard an analogy. It's more related into nutrition. This idea that the standard American diet, SAD, or the modern diet, it's a bit like we're spray painting dead leaves with green, and we're going rather than going, it's
Yeah,
fine. It's
exactly.
actually no. You've got to treat the cause. It's like what's happened to the soil. We've got to bring this tree back to life rather than spray painting. It's fine.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, I think it might be Mark Hyman, who's a medical doctor who's written quite a few books about it. I'd love to segue into trauma, into the link with, your personal circumstances and trauma, and just how that there might be an overlap between physical ailments and trauma. I know Gabor Mate in his book, The Myth of Normal, talks about it quite a bit in that. I'd love to hear your experiences working with others, your own, and how they overlap.
Working with my experience, working with what again? I couldn't quite hear that.
Oh, trauma. So
Oh,
trauma,
trauma.
you
Yeah.
know, so how
Well,
does trauma affect the physical ailments?
I have I have an older brother who's passed away, who he and I experienced a tremendous amount of trauma in our childhood. And I witnessed the trauma he experienced motivate, drag, push, pull, whatever you want to say, him down a path I never wanted to live. A path of drugs, a path of domestic violence, a path of incarceration, and and disregard for his own body. I'm not quite sure. I've lost track. He had either 8 or 9 children, I 7 or 8 different women, had zero relationships with any of them. As an adult, I have relationships with 3 of them, 4 of them, uh, that I found later in life. But as I watched all this unfold and how he dealt with that trauma, that wasn't going to be me. Now, we share the same mother, but he has a different father than I do. In fact, I have him as an older brother with the same mother, different father. I have myself a sister I lost and a younger brother, same mother, same father. I have a younger brother I lost as a younger sister, same father, different mother. And I have a younger brother, younger sister, same mother, different father. So, as the second oldest, with my older brother's all those problems, everything kind of fell on me at times to take care of all the younger siblings. So I knew I didn't want that, the trauma in his life or our life. I didn't want that trauma to lead me down the same path. So I had to make changes. I had to do things differently. Uh, he was involved in motorcycle racing and other things and playing pool and pool halls and whatnot. Nothing wrong with any of that. That's just the direction he went. I chose to go down the path of sports. And even though my parents never really watched any of my sporting activities, championship matches, the championship game, none of that stuff, I still maintained the sports, and then I came close to those players on my teams, and I was welcomed into their families from a standpoint of dinner and sleepovers and things of that nature. But I observed. I think that an innate skill I was given was to observe people, and to ponder and to evaluate. those things or those systems or whatever. And I think that was a real benefit. I recognized, maybe I didn't recognize, maybe I did it subconsciously, to help set my life apart from my older brothers. And literally, here we were as siblings, his life, my life. His life by choice, my life by choice. He made those choices because he was not strong enough to overcome the trauma, which was devastating. I'm not criticizing him. It was devastating. I chose to rise above that trauma to the best of my ability. Oh, please, anyone who can hear me talking to you, don't think that I'm perfect with what I did. I'm not. Don't think that I didn't have times when I took one step forward and three steps back. I did. It's been a lifelong battle. I'll be 64 years old. I look 80. I've had gray hair since I was 24. They're coming out now saying gray hair is a sign of all the stress you have. Well, my life was full of stress. And I had to find ways to do it, that rise above it, rise above the anger in my family. Every family member always had to be mad at another family member. You couldn't have a family party without some type of domestic violence happening, blah, 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 all the alcohol. It was just terrible. So uh, I tried to find peace in God. I tried to find peace in the power of prayer. Do I go to church today? No. Do I pay tithings? No, I don't feel the need to. Do I pray? Yes. Do I believe in Christ as my Savior? And do I believe in the Holy Ghost and inspiration? Yes. Do I believe that I have to be someone who goes to church to have that? No, I do not. So those are things that I apologize here. Those are all things that I've had to take pieces of to build this foundation. I probably built it in my lifetime 30, 40, 50 foundations of that's going to uphold my life. And probably I built, out of 50 foundations for talking purposes, I probably built 47 of them out of sand. I not having a lot of parental guidance. I try to emulate other people without asking them all their personal business. I didn't feel comfortable doing that. And so I get bits and pieces of their success in their lives. But since I didn't have all the right gravel and the right sand and enough water to mix the concrete for the foundation, it just didn't work. It fell apart. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so over years of experience of building all these false foundations, all these foundations that crumble, I finally have learned to begin to build a foundation upon the rock. Found a better location to build my foundation mentally. I found better materials mentally to build that foundation to support my life. And part of that started with, finding the proper companion. I've been with my wife for 14 years, and it's been life altering for me to be with someone like her, where in the beginning, my first companion was a lot like my mother, and my mother's been gone since 2000. We in the States, we just had Mother's Day yesterday. I love my mother dearly, but she was a terrible mother. She was just a terrible mother. She started having children at 14, and that was the thing to do, and was a honky tonk bar singer, and would find her boyfriends in the bars, and they were all alcoholics, and that's what she knew. And but as I got older, I realized some of the instances where she fought for us and did the best she could, and I do not fault her for being a product of the environment she was raised in. And I miss some of the conversations I had with her later in her life, and I love her dearly. But the support I have now in my life for the last 14 years was a real difference maker in this struggle against this disease, and a real difference maker in assisting me to build my mental strength up. Is my mental strength as strong as it can be? Oh, heck no. And I have to tell you, I don't know that it'll ever be as strong as I need it to be, but it's stronger than it ever was, and it's continuing to grow. And that's the important part to me right now.
Thank you, Keith. So, realize we've got about 5 minutes or so left. If someone is listening to this and they have some form of physical pain, or they've been through some form of childhood trauma, what would you suggest to them? What would you say to them if they came to listen to you speak?
Well, I would say to them that they're not the only one in the rowboat. They're not all alone. Many, many other people have suffered and are suffering like they are right now. And there are many people who have been able to take their lives beyond the point that they're at presently. And they too can take their life beyond that. But there's a catch. There's a catch to what I'm saying. This old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, maybe it is. Well, with peripheral neuropathy, there's no cure, but you could put it in remission and you could control your quality of life again. A lot of people think that's too good to be true. But in the case of what you're just asking me here about this person, I'm going to tell them there's a catch to them getting better. And I ask them, I look them right in the eye and I say, would you like to know what that catch is right now? I'll be honest, I'll tell you what the catch is. They'll say, yeah, sure, please tell me. I want to know. What's the catch? I say, okay. The catch is you. You're the catch. You've got to decide. You're sick and tired of being sick. You're sick and tired of hurting. You've got to decide that you can change it. And once you actually make that decision, then you have to believe and understand that you can change it by doing several things. First of all, you have to believe that you can change it. Next, you've got to work on your mental state and improve your ability and desire to do things. You start with self-talk. You start with encouraging yourself, because probably no one else in your life is going to encourage you. You probably have people in your life that are suffering that don't believe you're really suffering. You've got to be willing to do what needs to be done, and you've got to tell yourself that. You've got to be willing to do one very important thing: ask questions of your providers. And if your provider is not willing to tell you or take time with you, they just want to give you a pill and give you 15 minutes, then you have to be willing to stand up and fire your medical provider. You don't work for that provider. That provider works for you. And you don't have to go to a provider who is not treating you properly, giving you the time that you need, or have interest in your disease. And I'm so sorry, there's going to be providers that hear this, and there are providers that hear me say this, but I'm telling the truth. The best thing I ever did was fire my provider. I had a primary care physician, and I was telling her my feet were freezing and burning simultaneously. She didn't even look at me before she said, Mr. Day, that's not true. That's impossible. Your feet can't freeze and burn at the same time. I said, excuse me, they're freezing and burning at the same time. They're my feet. I'm telling you, they are. Not possible, Mr. Day. I very politely said, I think it's possible that you're not the right provider for me. Thank you very much for your time. I'll pay on the way out. And I found another provider. It's our right. As humans, we only have one body. What the heck do we want to put our entire health, our entire existence in the health of a provider who doesn't give us any time? It makes no sense, but we're brainwashed that that's just the normal, everyday kind of thing. That's what we're going to do. The sun rises, the sun sets. We go to a provider that gives us a pill, and we go home and we learn to live with it. They got to get out of that, and they got to believe that there's someone who can help them. And then they have to put an action plan in place. They got to go to the doctor. They got to figure out a way to follow through with the plan. In going to the doctor, I teach them to recognize the difference between sick care physician and a healthcare physician. It's not complicated, but they need to know the difference. They need to stay away from the sick care providers They need to run to the healthcare providers because healthcare treats the cause. I would tell them they have to understand the two secrets to putting this disease into remission. It is a blood flow circulation restriction disease. The microvascular blood capillaries that supply all the good to the nerve fibers become vasoconstricted by chronic low-level inflammation, so no blood can flow to the living, breathing nerve fibers deep in the flesh of the feet, legs, hands, and arms that control communication, hot, cold, sharp, dull, pain, numbness, balance, walking, all of that. So it's not rocket science. They have to increase the blood flow and decrease the chronic low inflammation. When you increase the blood flow and you increase the miracle molecule of nitric oxide, that helps to wash away the toxins of the inflammation, but they have to do other things like proper nutrition. They have to pay attention to what they ingest. They have to pay attention to exercise and moving. I'm not talking about lifting weights or running marathons. I'm talking about walking around the block. I'm talking about walking around the house and up and down the hallway. I'm talking about basic things that a toddler would do that will help them. So I lay out a plan of those things, and I just believe then that they've got to self-motivate. They've got to self-inspire themselves because not too many of their family members are going to help them with it. They just won't.
Thank you. Thank you, Keith. It's a very inspiring story, and yeah, I love what you share. So thank you. And how do people find out more about you? Where is the best place to locate you?
My website is neuropathywarrior.com, and I have been recently having it reconstructed in a professional manner to be able to offer more services for folks. There they'll find the books that I'm just finishing up writing and many other things, along with my newsletters and other things to help them. Neuropathywarrior.com. It will be live and going by this coming Wednesday before this podcast is even played. So that's where they can find it. And then I'm beginning my neuropathy tour, All the Truth, Nothing But the Truth tour, where I'll be going to small communities throughout the country and talking about neuropathy in the most honest manner with the highest level of integrity about what it is and what they can do about it.
Well, thank you. I wish you well with your tour, and it's been a real pleasure speaking to you. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. You are an easy person to talk with, open up with. Instantly, in viewing you, I feel a lot of credibility with you coming my direction from you, and a lot of genuineness, and that's important to me. And I wish you nothing but success, sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care.